Welcome to the channel, where today we plunge headfirst into the swirling shadows of one of America's most confounding numismatic enigmas, the 1946 wheat penny, a coin that at first glance appears unremarkable but beneath its coppery surface hides a labyrinth of unanswered questions, haunting anomalies, and stories so strange they've left generations of collectors in stunned silence, asking, what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? What if its very existence was the result of a perfect storm of post-war uncertainty, mechanical imperfection, and secrets buried deep within the bureaucratic corridors of the U.S. Mint? As America emerged from the fires of World War II, the presses resumed their steady hum, but something else began to stir, an undercurrent of irregularities that found their way into the very heart of the 1946 cent, starting with tales of ghostly doubling that linger around Lincoln's profile like a phantom echo, of inverted mintmarks that don't align with any known punch sequence, and of planchets that appear to have been improperly mixed or even struck using leftover materials never intended for U.S. coinage, possibly repurposed from wartime emergency blanks, creating colorations and weight inconsistencies that defy metallurgical expectations, yet were never formally acknowledged in any known mint documentation. From there, the mystery only deepens, as die clashes that should have been caught during production quality checks somehow escaped unnoticed, leading to coins where Lincoln's vest line carries fragments of wheat stalks or where faint outlines of Liberty appear warped and doubled in a way inconsistent with standard overpolishing, spawning endless debate about whether these were isolated accidents or part of a covert experimental batch. Numismatic historians have pointed to a series of obscure, declassified memos from mint employees in Philadelphia, referencing abnormalities in obverse die rotation and a non-standard striking pressure anomaly that corresponds suspiciously with several confirmed 1946 specimens bearing off-center impressions and rim distortion. Too consistent to be pure chance, yet official response has always been silence, leaving a vacuum filled by obsessive theorists, some claiming that an unrecorded die trial using outdated dies from the early 1940s was mistakenly released into circulation in early 46. Others whispering of a government-sanctioned test of new steel core planchets intended for possible Cold War-era currency durability trials, supported by lab-tested examples of 1946 pennies with unexplained magnetism, or anomalous densities that deviate subtly from standard composition charts. And then there are the stories passed from collector to collector, never fully proven but always impossible to dismiss. The elderly widow in Ohio who found a penny in her attic safe within mintmark floating eerily outside its normal alignment zone. The Arkansas coin show exhibitor who swore he once held a 1946 piece where Lincoln's initials seemed to vanish under UV light. The teenage boy in Montana who traded a roll of cents with a gas station clerk only to later find one struck so far off-center it carried no date at all, yet the wheat ears on the reverse were perfectly crisp and centered, raising questions about misalignment tolerances and mechanical failsafes at the time. Even die specialists who've spent careers documenting known minting stages express quiet unease when reviewing high-resolution scans of the so-called split shadow Lincolns, rare coins where faint outlines of an alternate design element appear beneath the primary bust. Were these mere artifacts of die wear, or remnants of an earlier design iteration never officially used? What about the unexplained microdot patterns found under microscopes along the edge of some 1946 coins? Too orderly to be random, too inconsistent to match known reading or mint tooling, suggesting a possible interaction with foreign minting technology or experimental anti-counterfeit measures tested and then scrapped before public release? Each strange anomaly feeds into a broader obsession that has driven collectors to decades of searching, comparing, disputing, and cataloging variations that the U.S. Mint never fully explained, as if the 1946 wheat penny is less a coin and more a riddle cast in copper, a mystery frozen in metal, each new discovery raising more questions than it answers, each confirmed error giving rise to rumors of even stranger finds waiting to be unearthed in dusty jars, forgotten piggy banks, or estate sale troves, sparking a relentless chase for something that might not just be rare, but never meant to be. And as we dive deeper into the historical fog surrounding its minting, from wartime production backlog to staff turnover, machinery recalibration, and legislative redirection, we begin to see how all these overlapping factors created a perfect window for errors to pass unnoticed. Or perhaps even be deliberately allowed, especially if they were part of confidential material trials or undocumented design tests meant only for internal circulation but accidentally unleashed upon the public. Consider too the remarkable fact that no two documented error specimens of the 1946 wheat penny seem to exhibit exactly the same flaw, with each example bearing its own signature irregularity, some with die cracks running like lightning bolts through the fields, others with mushy rims as though struck under insufficient pressure, some with repunched dates showing faint but undeniable secondary impressions above or below the primary numerals, leading researchers to speculate about multiple faulty dies being used concurrently, or even the quiet disposal of a known defective batch never disclosed to the public. The emotional intensity of those who have spent lifetimes chasing the next 1946 anomaly cannot be overstated, with forums buzzing over every grainy image of a new find, with collectors recounting dreams of locating a coin where the 1 cent motto is doubled horizontally or rotated unnaturally, or of encountering a reverse design struck through a cloth-like texture, possibly the result of a planchet contaminant or striking through grease-laden debris. All of this speaks to the unrelenting power of a single year's mintage to ignite global curiosity, obsession, and a kind of myth-making that has transformed the 1946 wheat penny into a legendary cipher within the numismatic world, where every new theory breathes life into old rumors, every discovery reshapes what we thought we knew, and every searcher becomes part of an unfolding puzzle that stretches across time, metal, and memory. So join us as we unravel the story of the coin that refuses to be understood, the coin that defies all patterns, the coin that may still be out there, waiting in change, quietly holding secrets forged in the chaotic wake of a world rebuilding from war and whispering to those who listen, "I am not what I seem." Next, 1951's wheat penny. Today we unravel one of the most perplexing, spine-chilling, and enduring mysteries in American numismatics. A story that begins with a seemingly ordinary 1951's wheat penny but spirals into a tangled web of secrets, missteps, and anomalies so peculiar that collectors still argue whether this coin was ever supposed to exist in the form it does. A coppery enigma forged in an era of post-war uncertainty and minted in a city that was no stranger to production pressures and bureaucratic blind spots, raising the question, what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? The tale of the 1951's wheat penny begins innocuously in San Francisco, a city whose mint had already earned a complex reputation for being both meticulous and inconsistent, where aging dies, overworked staff, and hurried schedules set the stage for what would become one of the most confounding series of coinage irregularities in mid-century America, and from the moment the presses began to strike, inexplicable deviations started to surface, slightly off-center strikes where Lincoln's eye seems to gaze from an unnatural angle, faint ghostly doubling on the "In God We Trust" motto that fades in and out like a whispered echo, and mintmarks so subtly repunched that even magnification struggles to reveal whether they are doubled, tripled, or something else entirely, not errors by the book but aberrations that exist just on the edge of plausibility, making the 1951's penny feel more like a forgotten experiment than a mass-produced piece of currency, even among veteran numismatists. There is a hushed reverence for certain specimens, coins where the wheat stalks curve at irregular angles, where Lincoln's initials appear to have melted into the field as if struck through a veil, where clash marks suggest that reverse dies collided without planchets in place, leaving behind impressions that do not fully match known die states, fueling speculation that undocumented die trials were mistakenly released, perhaps as a result of an overlooked vault cleaning or an internal order to purge obsolete die inventory during a staffing transition, all of which aligns with historical whispers about a chaotic few months inside the San Francisco Mint during which several long-serving die technicians retired suddenly and their replacements allegedly worked from incomplete records. Expert metallurgical tests conducted on a handful of high anomaly examples reveal inconsistent alloy layering, hinting at improperly mixed planchets or potential use of transitional blanks left over from emergency wartime stocks, with one investigative report describing a 1951's specimen that reacted to magnetism in faint pulses, far too subtle for steel, but odd enough to cast doubt on its composition, and when paired with discoveries of coins bearing underpolished fields and micro scratches that seem to mimic pre-strike abrasions rather than post-mint damage, a narrative begins to emerge of a mint struggling to regain control over its machinery, its workforce, and its oversight, raising not just questions about process but about intention. Was the 1951's penny a casualty of haste, or a deliberate test slipped into the stream unnoticed? Even more disturbing are stories from longtime collectors who recount handling coins where the mintmark appears to drift, not punched, but almost floating, as if misaligned from a separate strike altogether, while others describe pennies bearing a subtle halo around Lincoln's bust, like a spectral afterimage suggesting either a deeply worn master die or a misaligned hubbing process that introduced design distortions invisible to the naked eye but chilling under microscopic examination. And then there's the inexplicable 1951's with shadowed devices, features that seem doubled, not in the classical sense of hub doubling, but as if a ghost of the device was impressed just beneath the surface, later buried under a second, more dominant strike, spawning conspiracy theories about multiphase impressions, conflicting die pairs, or unauthorized alterations that could only have occurred within the walls of the mint itself. Meanwhile, official mint records from 1951 remain frustratingly opaque, with production logs that are either missing, abbreviated, or misfiled, and internal correspondence that hints at die fatigue and unusual field stressors, without clarifying what those terms mean, leading die state researchers to hypothesize that the 1951's series may have been the test bed for a brief, undocumented phase of experimental die tempering, a theory bolstered by the discovery of a coin where the entire obverse is tilted several degrees off axis, a misalignment so consistent and clean that it cannot be attributed to simple human error, suggesting instead a faulty die seat or a miscalibrated collar, both of which should have been flagged but clearly weren't. The more we examine these coins, the deeper the mystery goes, as if the anomalies are not just isolated incidents but chapters in a longer, stranger story unfolding through metal and time. A story that continues to captivate collectors who swear by their personal encounters with coins that should not exist, like the retired Navy officer who claimed to have found a 1951's penny with no visible date but with reverse details so sharp and misaligned they appeared to hover, or the estate executor who opened a sealed coin tube labeled 1945 and discovered instead a near-complete roll of 1951's specimens, each slightly different, as though created during a die deterioration cascade that changed ever so subtly with every strike, and even the professional grader who once refused to slab a coin because the mintmark didn't match any known punch style from that year, leading to heated debates within grading circles about the possibility of undocumented punch experimentation in the San Francisco facility. Every anomaly adds another thread to the tapestry of this mystery, as if the coin itself is resisting classification, defying the rigid labels of mint state, era type, or known variety, instead offering only riddles. How did so many coins with clear reverse clash marks escape detection? Why do certain examples appear to carry micro-engraved dots under the 1-cent text, as though meant to act as alignment indicators or secret anti-counterfeit markers? And how could so many inconsistencies emerge in a mint known for relatively stable outputs during this period unless something deeper, stranger, was happening beneath the surface? Something so subtle that even today's technology can't fully explain it? With every expert analysis comes another unanswered question, and with every new discovery from a collector's drawer or flea market tray, the legend of the 1951's wheat penny grows, its secrets whispering through copper and steel, beckoning treasure hunters, archivists, and historians into a decades-long chase for something elusive, something perhaps never intended to be found, an overlooked die pair, a rogue planchet, a buried memo, or a still undiscovered variety locked in a forgotten roll, waiting to be unearthed by someone who looks just a little closer, listens just a little longer, and understands that this penny is not just a coin, it's a cipher carved from the past, a message hidden in plain sight, and the key to one of the most haunting riddles ever to emerge from the U.S. Mint. Next, 1954's wheat penny. Today we plunge into the heart of one of the most confounding, spine-tingling, and endlessly debated mysteries in American numismatics, A tale that begins with the 1954 wheat penny and spirals into a labyrinth of minting missteps, unexplainable anomalies, and collector obsession so deep it borders on the mythic, raising the unsettling question: what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? On the surface, it was just another year, another cent, another modest coin pressed from the well-worn dies of the San Francisco Mint. But beneath the copper sheen of these 1954 pennies lies a story unlike any other, a series of anomalies, contradictions, and near supernatural irregularities that have left even the most seasoned experts grasping for answers. Beginning with whispers of doubling so subtle it's almost subliminal, of mintmarks that seem to hover out of alignment like displaced shadows, and of planchets riddled with inconsistencies in density, color, and finish, suggesting the presence of leftover or experimental blanks never intended for regular issue, perhaps linked to wartime reserves or test metals quietly fed into production without oversight or disclosure. And as reports began to emerge from private collectors, coin show exhibitors, and even former mint employees of strange clashes on the reverse wheat stalks, patterns that seemed almost etched into the surface, like echoes from previous dies, speculation exploded that these were not ordinary coins at all but remnants of a forgotten die trial, a mismanaged batch, or worse, a deliberately concealed series of experimental strikes that were never meant to reach the public, possibly born in a chaotic window when the mint was upgrading presses and recalibrating striking pressure settings. A transitional period that left technicians juggling outdated procedures with new equipment and uncertain tolerances, and it's during this liminal moment in minting history that the 1954 penny begins to unravel the fabric of standard classification, revealing coins with diagonal die polish lines that run contrary to any known cleaning pattern, initials that fade under UV light as though rendered with a vanishing technique, and ghost impressions that seem to depict remnants of earlier design templates. Phantom devices hiding beneath Lincoln's bust or faint outlines behind the 1-cent inscription that suggest overlays or double hubbing from incompatible die generations, leading some to theorize that a small batch of 1954 pennies may have been struck using obsolete master dies that were quietly repurposed or retooled due to an unexpected shortage of new dies, a theory bolstered by confidential memos uncovered years later referencing die fatigue inconsistencies and interim alignment adjustments that were never explained in official publications but appear in internal documentation from the San Francisco Mint archives. And as these oddities multiplied, reverse designs with missing designer initials, obverse showing a strange shimmering beneath the field that disappears under angled lighting, coins where the rim appears to dissolve into the planchet as though the collar die failed to fully contain the strike, the community began to whisper more fervently about what they were finding, with each discovery stoking the fire of mystery. A coin with a triple-punched mintmark that doesn't match any known mint punches from that year. A penny struck 12% off-center yet bearing razor-sharp detail as if the press compensated mid-strike. And most baffling of all, the so-called mirror ghost penny, a specimen found in Nevada in the 1990s bearing faint, mirror-inverted elements from both the obverse and reverse on a single side, as if the coin were accidentally struck between two dies that both left their impressions in reverse, a physical impossibility according to mint standards, yet verified by multiple metallurgical labs who refused to speculate publicly about how such a thing could occur. Collectors soon found themselves consumed by the mystery, creating entire catalogs of known anomalies, with some tracking regional dispersals of odd specimens and others constructing elaborate genealogies of die states in hopes of locating the missing link. An unblemished 1954 that might prove or disprove the existence of an experimental batch, and amidst this obsession, strange patterns began to emerge. Nearly all the most anomalous coins originated in Northern California, often from old bank rolls stored untouched for decades, suggesting that these coins entered circulation in a very narrow window and were quickly withdrawn or buried in collections before anyone noticed their true nature, and the deeper one dives, the more surreal it becomes. Tales of rolls discovered in the backs of abandoned safe deposit boxes, specimens found inside sealed mint bags marked for destruction, Even one report of a penny unearthed during demolition of a San Francisco mint wall bearing a date of 1954 but with a composition that included trace elements not used in any known U.S. coinage, fueling theories that the mint was experimenting with anti-counterfeit materials or pressure-resistant alloys meant for foreign contract coinage, and that the 1954s may have accidentally shared production space with those covert projects. The unanswered questions pile higher. Why do some coins show vertical striations under 400x magnification that suggest layered striking, as though struck twice at different pressures? Why have no official mint communications from 1954 addressed the presence of off-axis doubling on Lincoln's ear and bow tie, both frequent anomalies that appear too often to be dismissed as random? And what explains the whisper rims? Those faint, near invisible ridges that seem to halo certain specimens, detectable only under raking light, as if the die collar was either damaged or intentionally grooved to produce a test effect? The silence from official sources only heightens the intrigue, as FOIA requests yield little more than blacked-out memos and generic responses, leaving the community to fill the vacuum with painstaking research, wild but data-backed speculation, and hours spent poring over microscopes, slides, and digital scans of coins that seem almost to change personality with every shift in light or angle, and still the discoveries keep coming. Like the Utah collector who unearthed a 1954 S with an inverted S mintmark so crisp it appeared laser-etched, or the estate sale in Oregon where a jar of coins yielded not one but three nearly identical specimens with misaligned reverses and die rotation so clean and consistent that it suggested intentional tampering or rogue experimentation, perhaps part of a mint employee's private stash of test strikes, smuggled out during the brief gap between die installation and production approval. Through all of this, the 1954 sweet penny refuses to yield its secrets, standing as a monument to the hidden complexities of mass production, the fragility of bureaucratic systems, and the obsessive, sometimes all-consuming nature of those who dedicate their lives to solving numismatic mysteries. And as the number of anomalous finds continues to rise, some published in obscure coin journals, others whispered between trusted collectors at underground gatherings, the story only grows more tangled, more provocative, and more alive, pushing us toward a chilling realization that somewhere in the maze of mint history, human error, technological experimentation, and historical silence collided in 1954 to produce something extraordinary, a coin that stands not just as a monetary unit but as a coded artifact from a forgotten chapter of American minting, and that for those who are still searching, still hoping, still believing. The greatest discovery of all may yet lie waiting in a forgotten desk drawer, an old coffee can, or a rusted tin hidden in an attic corner, quiet, dusty, and glowing faintly with the mystery of a truth that no one was ever meant to uncover. Next, 1946's Sweet Penny. Today we venture into the murky depths of numismatic mystery and uncover a story so tangled in error, obsession, and secrecy that it has baffled historians, haunted collectors, and defied every rule of conventional coin production, because buried within the millions of pennies minted in 1946 lies an enigma so quietly powerful, so disturbingly inconsistent, that one cannot help but ask, what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? The 1946 Sweet Penny, at first glance, is a humble post-war coin, an unassuming copper disc marked with the face of a solemn Lincoln and the modest mintmark of San Francisco. But to those who look more closely, who peer beyond the ordinary into the subtle irregularities whispered about at coin shows, tucked into footnotes of outdated minting logs, or passed down in hushed conversation among collectors, the 1946 S is something far stranger, a coin wrapped in layers of unexplained features, haunting misalignments, and metallurgical oddities that no official record has ever fully explained, and the deeper you dig, the more unsettling the story becomes, starting with a string of early discoveries, Lincoln's initials missing entirely from the obverse field, as though erased before striking or perhaps never applied, dates bearing soft doubling that fades and returns under changing angles of light, and mintmarks with variations so bizarre they seem to float in space, shifted in position or depth in ways not possible with a single, standard punch, which has led some to believe that multiple mintmark styles were used, or that experimental repunching occurred on a level never officially recorded. Then came the planchet inconsistencies, coins weighing slightly too much or too little, surfaces showing irregular luster, or even faint magnetic response suggesting a war-era blank accidentally fed into a peacetime press, an error that could have only happened in the brief, chaotic years when the U.S. Mint was transitioning away from wartime steel compositions and resuming copper production, raising the chilling possibility that the 1946 penny might include remnants of abandoned planchet inventories or unauthorized blanks recycled from experimental batches. And yet none of these discrepancies were addressed in Mint circulars, not even in internal audits. And so collectors began to wonder, was this negligence or concealment? Was the San Francisco Mint in 1946 dealing with more than just routine production? Was it perhaps running unauthorized tests, or attempting to clear backlogged or defective materials under the cover of mass minting? Consider the die clashes, coins found with reverse wheat stalks faintly visible behind Lincoln's ear or jawline, not merely a die deterioration effect but full-on ghost impressions that indicate a misalignment between the obverse and reverse dies, likely from a mechanical malfunction or a botched die installation, yet somehow these errors escaped detection in a facility that prided itself on rigorous standards. And even more disturbing are the so-called layered strike specimens, where under high magnification, collectors have reported seeing signs of multiple impressions that don't quite align, suggesting either accidental double striking or an intentional test of die rotation tolerances. And as theories began to grow wilder, they were only fueled by shocking discoveries. A sealed roll from the estate of a retired mint technician containing 5 1946 pennies with reverse devices misaligned by exactly the same degree, as though struck in a series using a faulty press that was never removed from operation, or the specimen discovered in Arizona with a date so deeply sunken that it appears to have been carved, not stamped, suggesting an extreme overpressure strike or perhaps the use of a hardened die meant for experimental or non-circulating pieces. And just when the mystery seems to reach its peak, new threads emerge, confidential reports from mid-century quality control audits referencing unusual obverse stress fracturing and post-strike die fatigue, tied specifically to the 1946 batch, memos that were never published in numismatic guides and that suggest a string of failures swept under the rug to protect the mint's reputation. And as more anomalies surface, shadowed Liberty letters, off-center strikes with no rim flattening, Lincoln busts struck with soft ghost lines running from jaw to collar as though caught in a semi-complete hubbing process, it becomes clear that the 1946 wheat penny may not be a single error or even a collection of rare misprints, but the echo of something larger, something systemic, a moment in time when oversight faltered, or experimentation crept into routine production under the guise of ordinary minting. And so begins the collector obsession. Decades of carefully catalogued variants, coin-by-coin comparisons across thousands of examples. The development of underground grading rubrics just to classify the many faces of this one year's coin. And with every new discovery, with every faint die crack, every tilted rim, every ghosted mintmark, the mythos grows, fed by stories of collectors who've spent lifetimes searching for one more clue, like the Nevada woman who discovered a 1946 with no wheat ears at all but a smooth, mirror-like field where the reverse should be, or the Ohio teenager who stumbled on a specimen with a reverse so heavily doubled it appeared three-dimensional, as though two separate reverse dies had been used one after the other in misalignment. And always, the question remains, how did these coins leave the mint? Why were they never documented? Could it be that 1946 was the year the mint faced a production crisis so intense that its errors were buried, literally and figuratively, beneath mountains of plausible deniability and mass circulation, leaving only scattered remnants for future generations to uncover, one strange coin at a time? Some even believe in the existence of a master die that was never approved, yet somehow entered rotation, accounting for coins with unusual spacing between design elements or anomalies in the bust profile, coins that seem to depict a slightly different Lincoln altogether, narrower of neck, shorter of coat. A theory supported by digital overlays which reveal minute but statistically significant design deviations in a subset of 1946 specimens. And still, the mint remains silent, offering no clarification, no acknowledgement, just as it has for decades, even as collectors uncover more variations, from smooth-rimmed errors to double-die specimens to faint die gouges that suggest tampering, sabotage, or hurried die reworking under deadline pressure, each one a breadcrumb in the path to some deeper truth. And it is this silence, more than any error, that drives the obsession, because where there is no explanation, imagination fills the void, and within that void grows a community, a movement of researchers, archivists, hobbyists, and true believers who scan estate sale listings, who haunt coin forums at midnight, who peer endlessly through loupes and microscopes, hunting for that next anomaly, that overlooked outlier that could confirm what they've long suspected, that the 1946 wheat penny is not just a coin but a message, a cipher from a moment of instability. A proof of imperfection that slipped into circulation disguised as normalcy. And as we follow this trail deeper, past the known and into the speculative, into rumors of mint officials who quietly pulled flawed dies before inspectors arrived, of maintenance logs quietly altered to hide press failures, of long-retired workers who refused interviews and whose names appear only once in print, on the margins of discarded QA forms, we must ask ourselves, how many more coins are out there? How many more unexplained anomalies, overlooked for decades, resting in junk drawers and forgotten boxes, carrying with them the DNA of a mystery that has only grown darker with time? And what if the rarest of them all, the one coin that unlocks the entire riddle, is still out there right now, not in a museum or private vault but in someone's pocket change, waiting to be recognized, not for what it's worth, but for what it reveals, a glitch in the system, a break in the pattern, a whisper from history that this coin, the 1946 wheat penny, was never meant to exist. Last. Today we journey deep into one of the most unsettling, obsessively dissected, and chillingly unexplained chapters in American numismatic history, a tale wrapped in copper and cloaked in questions, all centered around the 1945 wheat penny, a coin that, on the surface, seems ordinary, yet beneath its modest design lies an epic saga of anomalies, irregularities, and government silence so profound that collectors have spent decades trying to untangle its secrets, raising one electrifying question that continues to echo across coin forums and collector circles alike. What if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? Minted during the waning days of World War II, a time when the entire infrastructure of American industry was stretched to its limits and the U.S. Mint was operating under intense pressure to balance production demands, material shortages, and wartime secrecy, the 1945 wheat penny emerged from this crucible not as a symbol of victory, but as a puzzle box of manufacturing errors, unexplained varieties, and haunting inconsistencies that have refused to be dismissed or understood, starting with early whispers of doubled dies on the obverse where Lincoln's profile appears faintly shadowed, like a ghost caught mid-turn, and continuing with the disturbing number of planchet flaws, coins showing pitting, lamination cracks, and surface blistering so severe that metallurgists began to question whether substandard blanks had been used, possibly recycled from rejected wartime steel core stock, or perhaps experimental compositions intended for another denomination altogether, mistakenly fed into the penny presses of Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco during a period of workforce turnover and internal chaos. And from there, the enigma only deepens, as reports surfaced of mintmarks that don't match any known styles from 1945, D.S. with odd curvature, S placed outside normal punch zones. Even coins completely devoid of any mintmark despite exhibiting regional circulation patterns inconsistent with Philadelphia's output, prompting wild but compelling theories about lost die. Trials, regional override orders, and confidential mint directives tied to war effort efficiency measures that may have authorized unofficial or undocumented striking runs. And as collectors began to compare notes, what emerged was a patchwork of errors so vast it defied coincidence. Wheat stalks on the reverse misaligned to the point of vertical tilt. Date numerals slightly doubled in a way that hints at multiple hub strikes. Lincoln's shoulder details partially missing or doubled with an angular offset, devices on the coin shifting left or right as though the die had slipped during striking, all pointing to a production process strained to its absolute limits or possibly sabotaged by mechanical fatigue and overuse. And then came the discoveries that turned mystery into obsession. Specimens found with invisible VDB initials that only appear under extreme magnification or UV light. Coins bearing the infamous shadow date effect where a second, ghost-like 1945 date floats beneath. The primary one as if impressed by a phantom die, and even the so-called reverse anomaly coins, where a faint circle outlines the central reverse design, a feature unknown to any official die templates and theorized by some to be the remnants of an aborted design change that was meant to debut in 1946 but accidentally slipped into 1945 production due to internal confusion or intentional testing, all of which forced experts to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about wartime coinage practices and the reliability of official records, which only adds to the disquieting realization that many of the anomalies reported with the 1945 penny are not only undocumented, they are outright denied by the Mint, leaving a trail of silence and missing files, production logs with entire pages blacked out, die usage reports that show gaps in sequence, memos referencing material inconsistencies that lead nowhere, and first-hand accounts from retired Mint employees who recall unusual retooling sessions and unlabeled dies being tested on night shifts, yet who refuse to speak further due to non-disclosure agreements or fear of legal retaliation. And in the void left by this institutional silence, a storm of speculation has taken hold, with some researchers insisting that the 1945 wheat penny was part of an emergency overstrike program, intended to repurpose unsatisfactory steel cents from 1943 but halted and hushed before full implementation, while others believe the anomalies stem from a covert collaboration with foreign mints or a top-secret materials test intended for post-war coinage evolution, supported by metallurgical analyses of certain 1945 pennies that revealed trace elements of nickel, zinc, or even tungsten, elements never officially used in wheat cent composition yet undeniably present in verified specimens, sparking a race among collectors to locate the most bizarre, least understood examples, such as the coin discovered in a North Dakota farmhouse with a perfectly centered obverse but a reverse so misaligned it overlaps the rim by nearly 2 mm, or the Tennessee attic find that bore two obverse, both faint and offset, as though struck by a misloaded press running reverse dies in complete defiance of Mint protocol, or the Pennsylvania row find that yielded 5 1945 wheat pennies with wheat stalks rising too far into the central field, as if the reverse die had been replaced with a subtly distorted hub from an abandoned design series, each find feeding the growing belief that the 1945 penny is not just a coin but a cipher for something deeper, a breakdown in control, a collapse in standardization, or a cover-up of massive proportions that can never be fully proven because the evidence has either vanished, been destroyed, or is still hiding in plain sight among the millions of ordinary coins still in circulation, waiting to be discovered by someone who looks closely enough, who feels the irregular spacing of the rim, who sees the micro-doubling in the Liberty text, who senses the uncanny curvature of a mintmark that doesn't belong, and who understands what it means, not in terms of value or grade, but in the undeniable reality that this coin should not exist in the form that it does, and yet it does, bearing silent witness to a time of upheaval, secrecy, and unrecorded action inside one of the most tightly controlled branches of the U.S. government. And every year, more pieces of this impossible puzzle emerge from coffee cans, dresser drawers, and inherited collections, each one adding fuel to the fire, each one telling a slightly different version of the same unspeakable story, that in 1945, amidst the fog of war and the promise of peace, something slipped through the cracks, something flawed, something unplanned, something extraordinary. And that those who keep searching may one day uncover the one coin that explains it all, or proves beyond doubt that this enigma was no accident, but an intentional act, a hidden chapter in the long, complex, and sometimes chilling saga of the U.S. Mint.